We will not be finishing Tanya tonight. We'll wait at least for next week. We are holding on page 148. And let's review a little what we learned last week. So we're talking about the Shekhinah, how the Shekhinah enters our world. And we spoke about the difference between the way the Shekhinah entered the world in the first Beis HaMikdash and the way the Shekhinah entered the world during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. And we explained that in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Beis HaMikdash, which is in the Luchos that were in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so over there was present in the Bayis Rishon, in the first Beis HaMikdash, it was the light of the Torah, which was within the Luchos, but it didn't make its way all the way down here. Essentially, it remains the light of the Hashem's Chachma and Hashem's Ratzon, which precedes the world. But usually everything filters down into our reality, and every single world, the energies adapt to the reality and enter the world in the form of the parameters of that world. In the first Beis HaMikdash, the oir was so intense, the light of Torah which was the Shekhinah, and the light of Torah that was within it was so intense, it only came down to the level of Malchus of Bria, which is an incredibly high level of revelation that was in the first Beis HaMikdash. He says in the second Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara says the Shekhinah wasn't there. What does that mean? The level of Shekhinah that was existent in the first Beis HaMikdash wasn't in the second Beis HaMikdash, but rather in the second Beis HaMikdash, that same light, that same Torah, and that same Shekhinah, which transcends worlds, because this is from the Chachma of Hashem, which is much higher than the Alma, the Skalia, the revealed world, much higher than the energy which is intended for the worlds. But that oir came down lower, 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 and the oir, the light, came down all the way until Malchus of Yitzira, and then Malchus of Yitzira enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the spiritual world of Asiya, and that was the oir that was also in the second Beis HaMikdash. The oir, as it was, the oir in the physical Kodesh HaKadoshim of the second Beis HaMikdash was on the same level as the oir is in the Chachma Bina Das, which is the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the spiritual world of Asiya.
They don't say that every generation it's ma'atu hadorot, every door, it's less and less and less.
That's what we're saying, that the second Beis HaMikdash was a lower oir.
So
it's not that the oir, by the way, I just want to make it clear, it's not that the oir itself was lower. The oir is essentially the same. The oir is the Chachma and the Ratzon of Hashem. The question is
the containment.
Yeah, how far does it come down?
And be contained within.
Right. How far does it come down?
They were not there.
So it would seem that the second Beis HaMikdash, that's a greyesa. That's something that doesn't have the same advantage as the first Beis HaMikdash, because the oir in the first Beis HaMikdash was much higher, and obviously in a certain respect that is the case.
Shekhinah wasn't.
The Shekhinah, the level of Shekhinah that was in the Bayis Rishon wasn't in the Bayis Sheni, correct? But on the other hand, there's a pasuk that says, "Gadol yeh kavod habayis hazeh achra and yoser min harishon." That the kavod of the second Beis HaMikdash, as the Gemara Masechtas Megillah says, that is greater than the first Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says that this expressed itself in two ways. Number one, the second Beis HaMikdash was bigger physically; it was taller and bigger than the first Beis HaMikdash, and also it lasted longer. The first Beis HaMikdash lasted for 410 years, and the second Beis HaMikdash lasted for 420 years. And that was a reflection of a spiritual superiority that the second Beis HaMikdash has. When we say Gadol, when the Torah says it's Gadol, that means the second Beis HaMikdash has some sort of spiritual advantage also. What is the advantage of the second Beis HaMikdash if the level of Shekhinah that was there was a lower level of Shekhinah?
What was the advantage?
And the answer is that the advantage is not despite the fact that the level of Shekhinah was lower, but because of that. At the end of the day, what is the tachlis of the creation of everything? What is the point of and the objective of all of creation? The tachlis of everything is that Hashem wants a dira b'tachtoinim. He wants a dwelling place over here in this lowest physical world. What does it mean a dwelling place? Does that mean a place where he happens to be, but it's not according to the parameters? It's not according to the kalim, according to the limitations of the place where he is. No, the point is not only that Hashem should be here, but that we should be able to relate to the level of Kedusha that's here. And when a level of Kedusha is too high, like we had in the first Beis HaMikdash, where the level of Kedusha that was there was the level of the world of Bria, and no one can go in except for the Kohen Gadol, because it didn't make its way all, the oil didn't make its way all the way down here. It's so high, and it didn't in any way adapt to where it is. It remains on the level of the world of Bria. That's not the ultimate dira b'tachtoina. To the contrary, there's an advantage when this same oir, the oir of the Torah, the oir of Hashem's Chachma and Hashem's Ratzon, which is the oir Ein Sof, when it comes down, the lower it comes down, that's actually a greater advantage. And that's an advantage in the Bayis Sheni than in the Bayis Rishon. So in terms of where was there a higher level of Kedusha, where was there Kedusha that completely blows everything away, a level of Kedusha that's beyond nature, and that's beyond the parameters of this world, that would be in Bayis Rishon, and that's an advantage. In terms of the level of the oir that was there, there's no question. The level of the oir in the Bayis Rishon, the first Beis HaMikdash was greater.
So what's the problem?
But in terms of what's the kavana, the kavana isn't that we should have a world, and in here should be an oir from the world of Bria, which we can't relate to because it didn't come down all the way into our reality. That kavana was more in Bayis Sheni than it was in Bayis Rishon. Because there you had the oir of the Shechina and the oir of the Torah came down another level, all the way down into the world of Asiya, at least the spiritual world of Asiya. Because the oir, as we mentioned, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the second Beis HaMikdash, was on the level that the oir was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the spiritual world of Asiya. And there's an advantage, yes.
Yeah. And Bria was the first Beis HaMikdash.
Yes.
So what was the purpose of, why didn't the Luchas and the Aron attenuate the strength of that art so we could relate to it?
Because the Luchas themselves think about the Luchas. The Luchas themselves were miraculous. The Luchas didn't belong here in this world. They were Maisa Elikim. So we have here a foreign reality, a godly reality present here, but we can't really relate to it because it's beyond us. It's a tremendous Kedusha. And this tremendous Kedusha, resulted in the fact that the people at that time were talking a higher madriga, and there was nevuah at that time, and ruach hakodesh, and all those things. But at the end of the day, that kedusha was somewhat imposed upon the world. It didn't enter the reality and the parameters of the world. It didn't enter what we call the gedarim of our world. The second Beis HaMikdash, it got a little, that same oir, the oir itself, adapted even more and came down to a lower level. And let's continue. We're holding right now Umishachara Beis HaMikdash.
We have to know this.
It's page 148, almost halfway down from the top. The first word in the line is Adam.
Yeah.
Umishachara Beis HaMikdash. Now the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So as the Gemara says in Mesachtes Brachas, Ein Leila Kadosh Baruch Hu Be'elamai Ela Dalad Amishal Halacha. Bilvad. Now, where do you have the Shechina? Where is Hashem to be found?
Yeah.
Wherever the place is, wherever a person, a Yid, is sitting and learning Torah, that's where the Shechina is. Even one person sitting and learning Torah, not even with a minion, because we know that Akol Be'asara, Shechinta Sharia, whenever there are 10 Yidden, you have the Shechina, even if they're not learning Torah. But even one person who's sitting and learning Torah, Shechina Imay, the Shechina is with him, Kedisa Be'brachas Pe'erakama, as we learned in the first Perek of Mesachtes Brachas. Pirush Shechina Imay, what does it mean the Shechina is with him? Are we talking about the Shechina the way it was in the first Beis HaMikdash? Are we talking about the Shechina the way it was in the second Beis HaMikdash? Also not. The way the Shechina comes down and chains down and encloses itself. Malchus da Atzilus be Malchus de Bria. Malchus of Atzilus comes down into Malchus of Bria, v'yitzira v'asiya. Malchus of Atzilus comes down first into Malchus of Bria, and then further into Malchus of Yitzira, and then into Malchus and of Asiya. And the Torah that we're learning now is the Oir Ein Sof as it comes down into Malchus of Asiya. Now we have to understand that everything in this world comes from Malchus Avasiya.
It's a spiritual world, you say. Malchus Asiya means the spiritual counterpart of this world.
Yeah.
It's not the Gashmias.
But everything in this world comes from Malchus Dasiya. Malchus Dasiya is the lowest level of the lowest spiritual world. So Torah also is Malchus Dasiya. So what's the difference between Torah and everything else? So there are two ways of understanding it. One, there are two main differences. Number one is everything in this world gets a little energy from Malchus Dasiya. Whereas in Torah, the whole Malchus Dasiya is there. It's mentioned, it's the brain. Torah is the Chabad, just like in the brain, the whole energy of all of creation. So all of the energy for everything that's in this world is contained within Torah. Everything in the world receives, just like the finger receives a little energy from the brain, and the nose receives a little energy from the brain, and the toe receives a little energy from the brain. Everything in this world receives a little energy from Malchus Dasiya in the Torah. That's the nerve center. Everything in this world, the energy for everything in this world is contained in Torah, which is the Torah which we have, which our Torah contains within it all the energy of Malchus of Asiya. That's one Nakuda. There's another Nakuda.
What was the Torah at the time of the Beis Hamikdash Rishon and Sheni? If Torah is the Malchus of Asiya, so what was its relative relation to the Kodesh Kadoshim with the?
So that was even in the time of Beis Rishon and Beis Sheni, when a Yid sat and learned Torah
in his private Beis Medrash.
It was the Shechina as it comes down through all the worlds. In the Beis Hamikdash was a much higher level of Shechina. When we say a higher level of Shechina, means the Shechina which did not come down and adapt itself to this world. And when you're learning Torah, that's the Torah as it enters this world. How do we know that the Torah that we're learning is the Torah as it enters our world? Maybe we're learning the Torah as it is in the world of Bria or Yitzira. No, he's saying here that our Torah is the Shechina as it comes down into Malchus of Asiya.
But by Sheni also, he said that it's Malchus Asiya, because he said they're two different.
No, and by Sheni it was Chachma. The Chachma bin Adas of Asiya was Mislabish direct.
Into where?
Into the Kodesh HaKadoshim.
And then the Torah, what got it from there?
And
learning good Torah.
When they're learning Torah, that went on further. That went
came from Yerushalayim directly to where they're learning in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, but it came down to Malchus of Asiya. When a person is learning Torah, that's the Shechina as it comes down further. In the Beis Hamikdash, the Shechina stopped here. When you're learning Torah, the Torah comes down even further. How do we know the Torah comes down further? Ki Taryag mitzvahs HaTorah, the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah which we have. In our Torah, when we're learning Torah, we're learning about the 600 mitzvahs of the Torah. Ruban Kikulan, almost all of them, hey mitzvahs maisius. The Torah talks about physical mitzvahs. V'gam atluyis b'dibur machshava, even those mitzvahs that are connected to dibur and to machshava, kamei, for example, Talmud Torah, or Birchas Hamazon, learning Torah, Birchas Hamazon, V'krishma, or Tefillah, which these mitzvahs are connected to speech and to the mind. Hakaimalan, but the halacha has been established. Dehir lav kedibur dami. That thought is not like dibur. You're not yoitza. If you think the words of Krishma, or you think the words of davening, you weren't yoitza. Until you articulate it with your lips. This is something which we as from people, we take for granted, but it's strange. You don't go when you go on the train, and you see people sitting and reading a Wall Street Journal or reading CNN on their phone. You don't see them moving. Okay, the title of the article, the byline. Okay, in Washington D.C. Yes, no, they're reading it with their eyes, they're scanning it, and they're processing it.
Yeah.
Yet when we're going and we're sitting, whether we're davening or whether we're sitting with a chumash or a gemara, our lips are moving. We don't even realize how strange it is because it's just part of our upbringing. But you have to limud Torah. You would think is primarily something which is in the mind, right? And same thing is davening is avodah shebalev, the avodah of the heart. Why is there this emphasis on dafka, on articulating?
Rabbi, the question is, you're saying here that hirhu lav bedibur, but we said machshava kemasa. It's the opposite exactly.
Chshava Kamaisa means something else. That means that if you intended to do a mitzvah, and then due to unforeseen circumstances, you weren't able to do it, then Hashem gives you the reward as if you did it. That doesn't mean that you can daven in your mind.
So you mean you don't get any credit if you sit and learn and you don't articulate the words, that you're just reading something that's Torah? I mean, there's no schar for that. I mean, how could that be?
What do you say, Reuven?
I'm guilty of that.
How could that be?
Because
I
I saw articulate, I can't concentrate.
You're sitting and learning Torah. How could it not?
We're not talking here about schar. We're talking here about the mitzvah. The mitzvah of limud haTorah requires akimas fasav. The fact is that if you make a bracha, a birchas haTorah, you have to say Torah. And by the way, for thinking Torah, you don't have to make a birchas haTorah. The halacha is, before birchas haTorah in the morning, you're allowed to think divrei Torah. Why? Because that's not the mitzvah. You want to know if you get schar, you want to know if the Eibishter is proud of you and give you some Gan Eden? Maybe. But we're not in this game for Gan Eden and schar. That's not what it's all about. We hear about doing the mitzvah, being mekayim the mitzvah. The mitzvah of limud Torah and the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema and the mitzvah of davening requires akimas fasav, requires that the person should articulate it.
But there's also a mitzvah of yediyas haTorah.
Right.
So if you're sitting and reading,
Is there a mitzvah of yediyas haTorah? Is that one of the Tarek mitzvah Torah?
Limud Torah.
There's an inyan of yediyas haTorah. There's a spiritual concept, and it's very important. But the mitzvah of Agisa Bayim V'Layla, the mitzvah of Vishinantam L'Vanacha V'Dibarta Bam is Akimas Fasav. Yeah, Yediyas HaTorah is also important, but the mitzvah is V'Dibarta Bam.
Wow.
I mean, they do talk about, I know there's different opinions here in Kedibur or not, but generally we say that you're saying for Birchas HaTorah, first that you have to say it.
The halacha as Paskin Al Rebbe Shulchan Aruch is that you don't have to do it for here, but it might be a l'shitasi because it's interesting. You say that there are different opinions about here kedibur, whether here there's a machlokes taka whether b'di'eved, not lechatchila, whether b'di'eved it's you can be yoitza tefillah or krishma b'hirur b'di'eved, and the Alter Rebbe Paskins. In Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe paskins that you weren't yotze even b'di'eved, which is interesting. You see over here how that Alter Rebbe is consistent in both his Shulchan Aruch and his Tanya. He paskins that even b'di'eved you're not yotze. There are days that say that b'di'eved you are yotze. No one says that l'chatchila you can do krishma tefillah with. But if let's say a person was sick or onus and he wasn't able to articulate it, so he thought it. Is he yotze? Was he yotze? Post fact. There are days that say, yeah, but Alter Rebbe holds you're not yotze even b'di'eved.
the Gemara
Halacha, he holds what?
The Gemara talks about it in relation to a Baal Keri, that they say he should just be Mahaher, but it doesn't help. It's not final.
So again, it's a shaila whether, in other words, if you can't say, if you're in a place where you can, let's say you can't, so you could be Maharer, even if you weren't yotze, you could still be Maharer. Let's not get lost over here. The point over here is, the Torah, the Alter Rebbe is trying to bring out over here a simple idea. The Torah that we learned entered the physical reality because the entire Torah is about the physical. It's about physical mitzvahs. The Torah as it existed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the Bayis Rishon, and even the Torah as it existed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Bayis Sheni, it wasn't that Oyer didn't enter our physical reality. The Oyer in the Bayis Rishon stopped in the world of Bria, which is a spiritual reality. The Oyer in the Bayis Sheni stopped in the world of Asiyah Haruchnis, which is a spiritual reality. In Torah, the Oyer, in the Torah that we learn, when a person, one person sitting and learning Torah, when we say the Shechina is with him, that means that the Shechina, which is the Chachma of Hashem, as it comes down into Malchus Datzilos, comes down all the way into our physical reality, which you can understand how great that is. And to a certain extent, there's an advantage of a person sitting and learning Torah over the Gili Oyer that there was in the Bayis Rishon. Think about that for a second. Imagine the Kohen Gadol walks into Kodesh HaKadoshim with a whole special hachon, and he has to be wearing big day lavan, and he has to have the Ketores, and if the Ketores isn't there, then he's a chayiv misaf. He has an averis because the oir there was so overpowering and so overwhelming. The oir didn't belong in this world. Let's put it in somewhat different words. The Kohen Gadol had to be on the level. Why only the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur? Because he had to be on the madrega to be able to experience that oir, which was so much above and beyond that transcended this world. And even in the Bayis Sheni, the oir was one that transcended the world. It didn't make it down here. And then there's Echad Sheyoshev V'Isek B'Torah. And the word Yoshev is interesting. You don't even have to stand to learn Torah. We're sitting here. We're sitting here with cups of seltzer, and we're relaxed. Yoshev also means B'Yis Yashvos, right? We're sitting other, and we are imbibing, we are absorbing, taking in this Hashem's Chachma, Hashem's Ratzon, the Oir Ein Sof. And it's entered our reality. We're learning about things that are familiar to us. We're learning about physical realities that entered our world.
But it's not as great as the art that was in the Kodesh.
Absolutely. So it depends how you define the word great. You could say that it's greater. The oir in the first place in the Kodesh Kodashim was higher. But what's greater? Greater is when the oir enters our reality.
Because it becomes useful.
Let's look inside weiter. V'tayag mitzvah Torah. This is the dira b'tachtonim. That's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants to be present in our world on our terms. Not that he should be present on his terms. If he wanted to be present on his terms, he could have just created a world and injected himself. Think about that for a second. He wants to be present on our terms. And where's that? That's in Torah. V'tayag mitzvah Torah, the 613 mitzvah Torah, even 7 mitzvah Rabbanan together, the 7 mitzvah Rabbanan is Begematria Keser, the 613 mitzvahs that we have, and the 7 mitzvahs that Rabbanan that we have, the gematria of that is 620, which is Keser. Shuratzana Elyin Baruch Hu. Keser is a reference to Hashem's Ratzon. It's called a Keser because just like a crown is above the head, the same thing also, there's Hashem's Chachma, Hashem's wisdom, and above that is Hashem's Ratzon, Hashem's Keser, Hashem's crown. What is Hashem's crown? What is above Hashem's head? What is above Hashem's wisdom? It's the 620 mitzvahs. In fact, it's like, you know when you want something, and then you explain why you want it? The same thing is also, everything begins in Hashem's Keser and Hashem's Ratzon. That's where the mitzvahs are. That's what Hashem wants. You want to know what Hashem wants? He wants you to put up a mezuzah, He wants you to put on film. He wants you to eat kosher, and He wants you to, what? To keep Shabbos, etc., right? Not to eat not to wear shatnez. And then later, it entered the Chachma. But the 613 mitzvahs again, and the 7 mitzvahs Rabbanan, these are Hashem's Ratzon, HaMelubish b'Chachmasa Yizbarach. That's Melubish in Hashem's Chachma, Yichados ba'Erin Seif Baruch Hu b'Tachlas HaYichud. And Hashem's Chachma and Hashem's Ratzon are absolutely one with the Erin Saf. And this is what we're experiencing when we learn Torah. You know, we're approaching the Yom Tov Vashulas and Bashkacha Pratis, where this is giving us a little of an insight into what Torah is and what we have when we're learning Torah. There's a medrash that says, and I forgot the name of the Amira. There was that there was an Apikoidus who came over to an Amira and said to him, the pasuk says that the whole world is filled with Hashem's glory, and you're trying to tell me the Torah says that the Hashem, when he spoke to Moshe, was mebein badei ha'aron, from between the sticks, the poles of the aron, from where the luchos were. If the entire world is filled with His glory, how's Hashem fitting in between the badim of the aron? So the Amira said, do me a favor, go bring me some large, full-size mirrors. He went to the bottom of the mirrors. He says, take a look. What do you see in the mirror? He says, I see myself. He says, okay, now I want you to bring me some small little mirrors. So he went and brought some little mirrors. He looked at it and said, what do you see over there? Yourself. He said, I see myself also. So he says, Mad. So the Amira says, if a human being can sometimes be big and sometimes be small, then Hashem, sometimes He's Meloich HaLaretz Kavodei, and when He wants, Tzimtzem Atzmai Ben Badei Ha'aron, He's able to compress Himself into between the bottom of the Aron. Now, what is between the bottom of the Aron? What is there between the poles of the Aron? What's there? The Torah, the Luchos.
Luchos.
And this mashal is an incredible mashal, Because when Hashem comes down into the world through the Torah, whenever the Torah, as we know, the Torah comes down level after level after level. Okay, the Luchos stopped in the world of Bria, but then the Torah keeps on coming down till it enters our reality. In every reality, it's the mirrors getting smaller. But that's such an amazing muscle. Think about it. The mirror is getting smaller. Because in the bigger mirror, in the smaller mirror, what do you have over there?
The same entity.
It's the same person. It's the same Hashem. It's the same Chachma and Ratzon of Hashem, which is existing in Chachma of Atzilos, and then comes down into Chachma of Bria, and then into Chachma of Yitzira and Asiya, and then into the Torah that we're learning. This is the Ur Ein Sof. This is Hashem compressed, the complete reality of Him. It's not that we have a lesser amount of Hashem's Chachma. Just like the mirror, you say, okay, in a big mirror, so I have all of you. In a smaller mirror, I have half of you. And in a smaller mirror, yet I have a quarter of you. No, in every mirror, there's all of you. When we say that the Eibishter was mitzamtzim himself, compressed himself into the Torah, that doesn't mean that he said, okay, I need to get myself into this physical world. This physical world can't contain me, so what am I going to do? I'm going to cut out 3/4, and they'll get only a quarter. In the world of Atzilus, you get 100%. And here you no, 100%. 100% of Hashem is in every single word of Torah. Which makes no sense. How is the infinite wisdom of Hashem compressed into the physical, limited Torah which we're learning?
The send the file, they compress it.
But that's because the file in the first place wasn't unlimited. It wasn't infinite. How do you compress something infinite into something which is
finite?
Right? So the Gemara talks about the idea of a pila bekupa de machta. A pila bekupa de machta, trying to get an elephant through the eye of a needle. How do you get an elephant to the eye of a needle? So in general, there are two ways. Either you shrink the elephant, or you enlarge the eye of the needle. But what if the elephant remains the same size and the eye of the needle remains the same size?
Out of luck.
But the Eber Hashem is nimna hanemnois. Hashem can take an elephant, something which is a bli gvul, and compress it into gvul.
Yeah.
And you have the bli gvul in the gvul, and it makes no sense. It's totally illogical. And why is that? As explained in Chassidus, because Hashem transcends bli gvul, He transcends gvul, He's above all of them, and therefore Hashem can take His infinite wisdom and compress it into the infinite words and Allah, into the finite words and halachos of Torah that we have in front of us. And that's what we have with Torah. When one person sits, Echad sheyoshev ha'esek b'Torah, yeah. So the wisdom of Hashem comes down all the way into the world of Asiya, and you think that's, oh wow, that's the, I wish I could have the Torah as it was. I know the greatness of the Torah is that as it comes down into the Taryag mitzvah Torah, the 613 mitzvah of the Torah, and the 7 mitzvahs of the Rabbanan, this remains ultimately, completely the wisdom of Hashem. The Chachma of Hashem, the Ratzon of Hashem, which is absolute Hu v'Chachma Yechad, and Hu Ritzoni Yechad, Hashem is one with His Chachma and one with His Ratzon. And as mentioned, I believe this is reflected in the Aron itself. The Aron itself was unique in that it combined the finite and the infinite. We spoke about this in one of the recent classes.
How you combine the...
How do you don't try to understand.
What?
If you want to sleep tonight, don't try to understand. But the fact is that it's brought down the Makim Aron Einay Min Hamida. There was something unique about the Aron, which means that the Aron on the one hand, it absolutely had physical dimensions, and it was limited in space. It had to be 1.5 amas by 2.5 amas by 1.5 amas, precisely. The dimensions had to be precise. It was limited. And if it wasn't the right dimensions, then it wasn't the Aron, then didn't have the Kedusha to it. So it was Gvul. It was definitely Gvul. On the other hand, we know that it's brought down that when you put the Aron in the middle of the Aron, in middle of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 amas by 20 amas, at least in the Mishkan. And if you were to take a tape measure, so first you measure the Aron. The Aron is 2.5 amas. Then you take a tape measure and you measure from one side of the Aron, and then you take the tape measure and you measure the room. And how big is the room? 20 amas. Then you take a tape measure and you measure from one side of the aron to the wall, 10 amas. From one side, the other side of the aron to the wall, 10 amas. The aron didn't take up any space. The room was 20. The aron was 2.5. Those are all confirmed and measured. But if you measured from each side of the aron to the wall, it was 10 and 10. Aron didn't take up any space. Now think about the significance of that for a moment. First of all, it's a nest that you can't imagine. It's not. It defies. Why does it? Right, because you want to say something's infinite, it's infinite. You want to say something's finite, it's finite. But the combination of the two. On the one hand, it's finite. On the other hand, it's infinite. And the bigger question is, the Ran famously says, the Drasha Saran, that Hashem doesn't stam do miracles to show off. He doesn't. Oh, you want to see this cool trick that I can do? Here, watch this. I can make that the Hashem doesn't do miracles for no reason. Every miracle, there's a reason for it. In other words, the fact that the Makam Aron Einim and Amidah is because it had to be Einim and Amidah. And why is that? Because what does the Aron represent? What does Torah represent? Torah represents this idea of the combination, of the coming together of the infinite and the finite. On the one hand, the Torah is the infinite Chachma of Hashem, one with Hashem Himself. On the other hand, here we are, me, you, with our extremely, extremely finite minds, and we're absorbing it. We're taking it in. We're understanding it. How? How are we understanding? How are we understanding the Chachma of Hashem? This is the Keser of Hashem. The Tayag Mitzvah said the Keser of Hashem. And yet it came down into physical terms and terminology. We're understanding it. Why? Because Makim Aron Einim and Amidah. Hashem, in a way, because He's Kol Yachol. And therefore, because He's omnipotent, He was able to bridge together these two opposites. Yes?
Why didn't we say that we would measure from one side of the Aron to that wall and see that Taka didn't take up any space, instead of us wondering how could it be that it's taking up space? Then we understand that the Gettelkeit of the Indian, instead of thinking how does this work out, when everybody knows that just by proving, going from the opposite side of the Aron and measuring it to that wall and seeing that it's 10 amas that way, and if we measure from this way to the wall, it would also be 10 amas. Then we understood that Mamish didn't take up any space, as opposed to saying, how could it be 10 and 10 is 20, this thing is in between 20.
I hear you. A technical question, I don't know the answer. I go to Kasha. Okay. And this is specifically, we're talking here about halacha shebetayra. You know, we say that b'shachara beis hamikdash ein le'la kadosh baruch hu be'elami ela dal da'am shel halacha. Where is halacha most revealed? In Torah Shebaal Peh. In Torah Shebaal Peh, in Torah Shebiksav, you learn Torah Shebiksav. Kshartem lo'eis al yadecha v'yil toita v'esh bein yanecha. What does that mean? No one knows. No one has any clue. In Torah Shebiksav, when it says work for 6 days and the 7th day you should rest, what does it mean to rest on the 7th day? No one has any clue. Where is the Hashem's Ratzon? Where is the Keser of Hashem? Where does it come most revealed? That's Dafka and Torah Shebaal Peh. Let's do this inside. Vashem b'chochma yosad aretz. With Hashem's chochma, that is the foundation of the aretz. Aretz is a reference to He Torah Shebaal Peh. Because aretz, according to Kabbalah, is a reference to Malchus, because it's the lowest of the spheres. And as we say in the Pasach Eliyahu, Malchus Peh, Torah Shebaal Peh. Right? The Malchus is Torah Shebaal Peh. So Malchus, which is Aretz, is the Torah Shebaal Peh. So Hashem b'chochma yosad Aretz, meaning that where does the Aretz, where does the Torah Shebaal Peh come from? The halachas and Torah Shebaal Peh come directly from Hashem's Chachma. The nafka michachma ilah, which comes from the supernal Chachma, k'meshakasav b'Zayar, as it says in Zayar, the Abba Yosad Brata, that the father is the foundation of the daughter. This is Kabbalistical talk. But just like here in this physical world, there's a special relationship that a father has with his daughter, in a way even more so than his sons. So the same thing, this is a reflection of a spiritual reality, which is that Abba, which in Kabbalistical terms, Abba is a reference to Chachma. The sphere of Chachma is called Abba, it's called the father. And the Bas, the daughter, is Malchus. You have all the spheres make up a beautiful nuclear family. You have the father and the mother, which is Chachma and Bina. And then you have the Midas and Malchus, which is the Ben and the Bas, the son and the daughter. So the father is Chachma, the daughter is Malchus, and the father enjoys a special relationship, Nafka, with the daughter. And that's reflective of the fact that the daughter, which is Malchus, which is Torah Shebal Peh, is most rooted in Chachma, because in Torah Shebal Peh, which is where you have the revelation of Hashem's Ratzon, the revelation of the mitzvahs, that is a direct pipeline straight to Chachma, straight to Hashem's Chachma, straight to the Chachma and the Ratzon of Hashem, which is within Hashem's Chachma.
You're saying that this is a commercial because we are considered connection to Bonim of Hashem, Bonim of Hashem Lekechem. So we're saying we have that connection from we're called,
You're getting caught up in a detail. The Zohar says Abba Yasad Brata. Let's leave it alone for now.
It's giving it as a mushal because generally it's not necessarily that what a person is closer with is. It depends what.
There are different Mamari Chazal. I don't remember them offhand, but we could look at them up here where it talks about specifically the relationship of the father and the daughter. There are such Mamari Chazal. It's a different type of relationship. It's not. There's a certain closeness there that's not even by sons. And I think Mizetas B'chush. But Mitzias, you see it also. Anyways, so we're sitting over here, and it's Erev Shavuos, or almost Erev Shavuos, but it's Erev Shavuos. And this is really very informative also regarding the Yom Tov Shavuos. Because the Yom Tov Shavuos is a puzzling Yom Tov. We've spoken about this in past years. What is this Yom Tov? What is the significance? What is the substance of the Yom Tov Shavuos? What happened? Vav Sivan Tavshin, Vav Sivan in the year, not Tavshin, the year at the base Taf Mem Ches, some 3,330 years ago, somewhere around there. So Hashem revealed Himself and He gave us the Torah. What does it mean He gave us the Torah? We had the Torah beforehand. There were yeshivas beforehand. They learned Torah beforehand. There's the yeshiva in Goshen, there's the yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. And in Mitzrayim, we know the Leviim didn't work because they were sitting and learning Torah. So what exactly happened about in Torah? This is somewhat of a famous question. And there are many answers that are given to this question, but in Chassidus it zones in on a certain medrash, which the medrash says that when Hashem created the world, the rule was Hashemayim Shemayim L'Hashem V'aratz Nasan Livnei Adam. That there was this division between the Shemayim, and the Shemayim belonged to Hashem, and the Aretz, that's who this physical world was Livnei Adam, that belonged to us. And there was this unbridgeable divide between heaven and earth, and that which was holy, and that which was mundane. And then, by Matan Torah, that divide was bridged. And it says, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem comes down Har Sinai. And then, Val Moshe Amar Alei al Hashem. Moshe then afterwards goes up to Hashem. And suddenly we created highways connecting us to Hashem. And a lot of ink has been spilled on this, what this means exactly according to Chassidus. But the first thing we see right away is the connection to our Perek. But what is the ultimate ideal? Is when the Shekhinah comes down, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. We're trying to bring the Eibishter as low down here in the world possible to make a dir b'tachtonim. Not that Hashem should remain lofty and removed. And the Avos, they did mitzvahs before Matan Torah. They did. But there were two primary differences between the mitzvahs before Matan Torah and the mitzvahs after Matan Torah. What happened by Matan Torah? There were two main differences. Or the Torah that was learned before Matan Torah and the Torah that was learned after Matan Torah. One is in terms of the relationship between Hashem and creation. We know when a teacher teaches, so the teacher gives over a lot of beautiful ideas, a lot of insight, but the teacher doesn't and can't convey and transmit him or herself. there's the teacher, there's the student, and what you're getting is a little of the, especially if the teacher is on a much higher level than the students. So what are the students receiving from the teacher? The teacher is taking a little part of his or her intelligence, a little chelek, which is shaykh for the student to be able to understand, and that's being given over to the student. Can you say that the student is really getting the teacher seichel by itself, the way the teacher understands things? No. And before Matan Torah was the same thing. The Torah that they learned Torah, but what did they learn? They learned that part of, Hashem gave over to the world, not the essence of who he was, not the highest part of him, but the lowest possible levels, that part which is shaykh to creation and shaykh to the Bria, was given over. And then came along Matan Torah, and what is the first word of Matan Torah? Anochi. What is Anochi? And this, continuing on the theme we're talking about, the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that Anochi is a Rashi Tevis. Rashi Tevis of Ana Nafshi Ksavis Yehavis, which can be translated as I wrote myself into the Torah. I, Nafshis, myself, Ksavis, wrote myself in Yehavis and gave it to you. The Eibishter put himself into Torah. Not that there's something that Hashem gave us. He himself. As the Zohar says, Oisi Yatam Leichim. The Pashat, when we're learning Torah, we're Pashat taking Hashem. We had this earlier. Remember, V'yichu li truma, where Hashem says, V'yichu li. Sorry?
Lishmi.
So it says, V'yichu li, that you should take li. Hashem is telling us that through truma, which is Torah, truma is, the Zohar says, truma is Torah mem, the Torah that was given in 40 days, the word truma is Torah mem, that through truma, V'yichu li, we're taking Hashem, we're Pasha taking Hashem. That's why it doesn't say V'yitnu li truma, even though that would be more grammatically correct. V'yichu li. So one thing that happened in Matan Torah is that we're getting Hashem himself. Hashem himself, as we mentioned, Simtzem Atzmai Ben Badei Aron, he himself is compressing and compacting himself and giving us himself in its entirety. And there's another difference. The other difference between before Matan Torah and after Matan Torah is that before Matan Torah, the mitzvahs that the Avos did were about the spiritual content. They were connecting their spiritual selves with Hashem. It wasn't about the physical. And I'll give examples of that in a moment. But what we understand is that before Matan Torah, the highest part of the human being connected to the lowest part of Hashem. After Matan Torah, Hashem himself connects to the lowest part of the human being, which is the Maisa B'Poel. What is it? What do I mean? You understand? In other words, our highest point connected to Hashem's lowest point. That was before Matan Torah. And after Matan Torah, the accomplishment is that the divide was removed completely, and Hashem himself is being connected in the Tanya, like we're learning today, in the Tanya Mitzvah Torah, in the physical. And that goes to say, I'm thinking. That's great that you're thinking Torah. And when you're thinking Torah, you're connecting your spirituality with Hashem. That you could have done before Matan Torah also. The whole accomplishment of Matan Torah is that you say words of Torah, you're not only connecting your mind to Hashem, you're connecting your lips to Hashem. And as we learned earlier on in Tanya and Perek Lamed Zayin, that when you connect your lips to Hashem, you're connecting the whole world to Hashem through a process that's discussed over there. And there are many different concepts that are explained based on this. One of them is, there's a beautiful sikha from the Rebbe. He says, we know Hachnasas Archim is one of the biggest Jewish midos that there is. From where do we know? Where do we learn Hachnasas Archim from? Ram Avinu. Ram Avinu was a big Machnas Eirach. In fact, he was so big a Machnas Eirach that he was once busy speaking to Hashem, and he sees 3 guests coming, and he tells Hashem, "B'mechilas kvoidcha, I'm sorry, I have something more important to do right now. So why don't you, if you want, you could wait for me, but I have to go and do Achnasas Archim." From that we learned that Gedela, Achnasas Archim Yeser Ma'akabalas Pnei Shechina. So the Rebbe asks a question. It's called a klotz kasha. But Avraham Avinu wasn't doing achnasas archim. He thought he was doing achnasas archim. Really, they were malachim. They didn't need to eat, they didn't need a drink, they didn't need lodging, they didn't need anything. So as it turns out, Avraham Avinu didn't do achnasas archim. It was all one big illusion.
No, he didn't know that.
He didn't know that, but at the end of the day, he missed out on talking to Hashem. And more than that, the whole concept of Gedela, Hachnasas Archim B'Yisrael, Makavos Neshchina, where do we learn it from? From a lie. There was no Hachnasas Archim over there. Why would Hashem do that to him? Why would Hashem... The Rebbe says that this story actually illustrates the difference that there is between before Matan Torah and after Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, as we mentioned, it was all about connecting spiritually to Hashem. So what place does the physical have? Okay, the place the physical has is that when the spiritual is complete, it expresses itself also physically. The physical is only an expression of the spiritual. Before Matan Torah. Just like, this is something we've spoken about in the past. When you have a relationship, the physical acts that you do in the relationship aren't that important. They're reflections of the spiritual connection, of the emotional connection that there is. And if there is no emotional connection, the physical acts are nothing. Now, why is it that when you come home Erev Shabbos and you give your wife roses that she's happy? But if some stranger knocked on the door and gave her roses, she wouldn't be happy. 1 second, do roses make her happy or not? The answer is it's not the roses. The physical is only a reflection of the spiritual midas, of the emotions. Before Matan Torah, our relationship with Hashem was the same way. Yes, they were physical. We gave Hashem roses. But the roses weren't what was important. It was the feeling behind it that was important. Why? Because we were connecting not our physical self with Hashem, because our physical self remained removed from Hashem due to the fact that it was physical and mundane and limited. We were connecting spiritually to Hashem. So Avraham Avinu, his avodah was chesed. The gilui, the revelation of the chesed in his neshama, that was his greatness.
His intent, not the mind.
It was about the chesed. The chesed expressed itself in different behaviors, but the main thing wasn't the behaviors, because before Matan Torah, the main thing wasn't behaviors. Before Matan Torah, you didn't need to articulate the words. It wasn't important. And if you did articulate them, it's because your feelings were so strong that they came out in your words. But the words themselves weren't important. That's why the Zohar says something interesting. The Zohar says that Yaakov Avinu, how did he do the mitzvah of tefillin? With the sticks. You know the famous story of the sticks, and he peeled off some spots. The Zohar says, it's a strange story there. The Torah is telling us about how Yaakov went and took this stick and that stick and made damp, and he peeled off some of the bark. The Zohar says, this is his way of tefillin. That's tefillin? So maybe tomorrow I'll open up a store and I'll say I have a cheaper version of tefillin. Instead of spending $2,000 up here, I'm going to get sticks. No, that's the sheep. I'm going to get the sticks, I'm going to peel off and make some splotches on it, and I have tefillin like Yaakov Avinu had. I have a Yaakov Avinu's tefillin. It doesn't work. Why? Because tefillin, it's very specific the way tefillin have to be made. But that's only after Matan Torah, because after Matan Torah, where the physical is important. Before Matan Torah, whichever object he used, there was the kavanah behind it. And by the way, what happened to the sticks after he finished with them? He threw them in the garbage. Why? Because again, it was about connecting the spiritual to the spiritual. And in general, the Alter Rebbe says in Torah, how could they have worn tefillin before Matan Torah? What did it say over there? There talks about, you think of the Kaddish Likavacher, it talks about going out of Mitzrayim, but they were busy writing parchment which talked about, right? What is how does it end? Obviously, they were doing mitzvahs in a spiritual way, and they were connecting spiritually to Hashem. By the way, there was only one exception to this rule. One exception. What was the one exception? It was the mitzvah of Milah. because that was the only mitzvah that Avram was commanded by Hashem. All the other mitzvahs he did was, and the mitzvah of Milah Taka, it was about the physical, and the physical became Kaddish, which is why when Avram Avinu needed a chefza shel kedusha, when he needed a holy item to make Eliezer, so Eliezer should swear on it, why didn't he go find a mezuzah or a Sefer Torah or a tefillin? Avram didn't have a Sefer Torah. I don't know if he had a Sefer Torah, but even if he would have had a Sefer Torah, it wouldn't have been holy.
I got a question. How about the
The Gid HaNasha didn't become holy, to the contrary. We're talking here about something which you do a mitzvah with, it becomes holy. That's a mitzvah leisasa. Yeah. And even Gid HaNasha, was that a mitzvah before Matan Torah? I don't know if it was a mitzvah. That was something they accepted upon themselves. But Al Kain Lo Yechlu B'nei Yisrael. But when was the tzivui? That the tzivui might have been a Matan Torah. I'm not sure about that. But Al Kapanim, so Avram Avinu, imagine there was strangeness of it, that the only chayfetz of Kedusha, the only holy object he can find is his bris milah. So he has to make Eliezer to swear on his bris milah. Because, again, even if Avram Avinu had a mezuzah on the door, it wasn't holy. Why? Because then it wasn't about the Gashmi, then it was only about the Ruchni at that time. And after Matan Torah, the Iker becomes Taka, the Tayag Mitzvah Torah, the action, not the Kavanah. It's the exact opposite. Exact opposite. You can have all the Kavanas of eating matzah, but if you didn't eat the matzah, you weren't Yotza.
But without the kavanah, you're not Yotze either.
You are.
Yes? Mitzvah shlichus kavanah.
Not matzah.
No, but let's say other mitzvahs.
Okay, but it's a different type of Kavanah. It's partially you have to have a mind you're doing the mitzvah.
If the ikr is the Maisa, so why you need the kavanah?
The ikr is the Maisa. The ikr is the Maisa. The Kavanah, let's put it, the Kavanah, even if you're going to say mitzvah strichas Kavanah, the Kavanah is a Tanai. It's not the Etzem HaMitzvah. The Etzem HaMitzvah is the Achila.
But it's ma'akiv in the mitzvah.
Even if you're going to say it's ma'akiv, it's a Tanai. I don't want to get too lamdish over here. But there's a difference between a Tanai and the mitzvah. The mitzvah is not the Kavanah. It's not pshat that there's two elements to mitzvah. There is the machshava and there's the ma'aseh. No, there's the mitzvah. Alama, there's a Tanai le'ikuva, you have to have Kavanah. But that's not the mitzvah. Mitzvah isn't the Kavanah.
The other way around, before Matan Torah was the kavanah.
It was all about the Kavanah.
Only kavanah.
It was only, yeah, okay, so the Kavanah expressed itself a lot of times in action. Just like when you love someone, you give them a gift. But the main thing is the love. Not the main thing isn't the gift.
Who told them how to do the action? They made it up themselves?
The Ruach HaKodesh, however it may be. But the point was that it was about, again, they were connecting their spiritual selves with what? With the lowest level of Hashem, the level of Hashem, which is shaykh to creation. Comes along Matan Torah, and now we have Ana Nafshis Ksavis Yehavis, that we're connecting to Atzmus, the essence of Hashem, and where are we bringing the essence of Hashem? Where are we squeezing it into? In this world, and Elam Hamaisa, and when we're learning the Torah and learning about the Halacha Shebet Torah, which is in Yadam Gashmiim, and in the Mitzvahs Gashmiim, we're making the world into a holy place, the Gashmiis of the world. And this is the Nekuda, this is the Iftu. It's the accomplishment of Shavuos. You know, it says that Yom HaShishi, the whole world was waiting to see if we're Mekabel the Torah or not. And if we had not been Mekabel the Torah, then the world would have reverted to nothingness. What's wrong if we would have sat and learned Torah without accepting the Torah? Think about that. Just like Avraham learned Torah and Shem Ve'ever learned Torah, we accepted the Torah. We wouldn't have accepted the Torah. But what would have been so bad if that would have continued? But the answer is that the reason why Hashem created the world is dafka because He wants Adiri B'tachtoinu. The others were a preparation. But the Avodah begins after Matan Torah when we bridge that gap and connect the lowest of the low with the highest of the high. And that happened in Matan Torah. And if you would not have accepted the Torah, if that wouldn't have happened, then the whole tachlis, the whole purpose of the creation of the world would not have been realized. And this reflects itself in many, many different ways on Shavuos. And the Rebbe has so many different sikhs explaining every single angle of Shavuos from this direction. This idea that how the whole point of Shavuos is the connection of the highest to the lowest, and dafka the dir betachtoinim. This is the chibur, the connection of the elyonim and tachtoinim. I think we spoke about this in our previous year, how Shavuos is unique, and that it's the only Yom Tov wherein we have a day which is completely choil, which we make into completely kodesh. The second day of Yom Tov, there is no tzveika d'yoyma. On the second day of Shavuos, every other Yom Tov there's a tzveika d'yoyma. In Shavuos there is no tzveika d'yoyma. And the Chazal came along and they're misakin and chutz la'aretz, so we make a second day of Yom Tov. Talk about the ultimate, taking something which is choil and turning it into kedusha. And one of the areas where it expresses itself is something unique about the Yom Tov of Shavuos, where the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that when it comes to Shavuos, is kuli alma moidi deba'ina nami lachem. Because the machlekes benegay to Yom Tov, are we supposed to devote Yom Tov to Hashem and to spiritual matters? Are we supposed to devote Yom Tov to ourselves, to enjoying ourselves? Are we supposed to divide Yom Tov, maybe a little, some of this, some Hashem and some lachem? And that's some machlekes benegay to every single Yom Tov. When it comes to Shavuos, so everyone is moida. The be'ina nami lachem, that in Shavuos we have to enjoy ourselves. We have to eat and we have to drink. We have to physically enjoy ourselves. As Rashi says, to show that we appreciate that we got the Torah. For Exich the Shaila, if we want to show that we appreciate we got the Torah, then why are we eating cheesecake? We should go learn Torah. But once we understand the Nekudah of what Matan Torah is all about, the Matan Torah is that the Lachem also should be holy. That we should become holy. Not only, and every part of us become holy, including our eating, including our drinking, including our sleeping. And it's not only about that the highest part of me connects to Hashem. The highest part of me means when I'm davening, I'm connected to Hashem. Or when I'm learning, I'm connected to Hashem. When I'm doing a mitzvah, no. The lowest part of me, my eating also has to be connected to Hashem. That's the chiddush of Shavuos, that not only the highest part of me connects to Hashem, but the lowest part of me connects to Hashem. And which part of Hashem? The Anoichi of Hashem, because we're bringing the Anoichi of Hashem into every single part of the world, and even into, as the Rebbe would say so many times, Tachtoin she'en Tachtoin lamata himenu, the lowest part, the part where there is nothing lower than that. Anyways, everyone have a good Yom Tov, and a Kabbalah Satira b'simcha or b'pnimius. And I'll see you all, Mitzvah Hashem, next week.